who's the avatar of who I'm targeting, right? So like everybody talks about motivation, distress, and all that. Okay, like what does that look like? Like paint the picture in your head, and then how do we now put criteria together based on what we can filter down on to build that list, right? So that's kind of how I do it. What's the big list that's popping for everybody right now? What's the list that's generating most of the deals for you guys? But Todd, all absentee, or you're just going, you're just hitting investors, right? So like anything absentee owned, or do you carve it up? Yeah, all of them. And then Dan's high equity and vacant. Dan, owner ox as well, or just absentees? And it makes sense, guys, right? Because like investors, when there's a lot of turmoil in the markets, investors start freaking out. It may not be their wisest decision to be having to dump their properties, but it's what happens, right? They have to liquidate somewhere. There's a lot of turmoil happening out there. It's a great time to be targeting that stuff. I still think if you guys have not run what I call the COVID list, has anybody here run the COVID list? You're probably like, Todd, because you send so much volume, you're probably laying over these people. Well, maybe not. You may be laying over some of these people anyways, but the COVID list, for me, guys, is give me the investors that bought the 2 years before the COVID shutdown and the rent moratoriums and the eviction moratoriums went in place, right? Because if you were a first time property buyer, investor in property at that time, or even if you owned a small portfolio, and then that time hit, like you didn't have a good experience, most likely, right? Over that 2 years. So Todd, what I call the COVID, like we have this in direct skip for you guys that are users. The COVID list to me is just everybody like absentee owned, non-owner occ, absentee owned, and then you can do out of state as well if you want to like really get a little bit more to make sure they're running through property management. And where they purchased it between, it's probably like 1/1/18 to 12/31/19, probably like that time frame. Those 2 years. I don't think you only have to do sub twos if there's lending on them. I mean, some of them will have been cash buyers in their IRAs. They might not have loans on them. Honestly, with the appreciation that some of these markets have seen too, you might not even have to go to like, it may be a better deal than even that. Because oftentimes they're putting more down, right? It's not the same down payment. It's just like, I'm glad we got here, right? Because this is a conversation and it has to come up a lot, but like this is the way to break it down is like, who's the avatar of really who I'm targeting, right? So like everybody talks about motivation, distress and all that. Okay, like what does that look like? Like paint the picture in your head. And then how do we now put criteria together based on what we can filter down on to build that list, right? So that's kind of how I do it. Same idea, right? So when you think about like, and this is a little bit different, but like if you were going to target a $1 million house that you wanted to buy and somebody bought it with a loan a year ago, 2 years ago, like us as investors, we look at it and we go, okay, 2 years ago, like they're probably not going to be able to make me a good enough deal. The difference is that $1 million plus, they're pulling a jumbo loan on it, right? So like their down payment that they're putting down on that property is way different. So in your head, what you're translating to, there's not enough equity to make a deal happen there is wrong. It's just about, will that owner sacrifice that down payment, right? Will they give up that 30% or some percentage of it to make the deal happen? And often cases, yes, they will. It's just, again, it depends on the distress and the motivation in that situation. But it's the same kind of thing here. If they bought an 18, in a lot of markets now, even if they did it with a loan, there may still be a big enough deal you can make happen in there. So I would look at those guys like that. That to me is a natural, okay, who's gonna, right now, if they're invested in real estate and they're invested in other stuff, markets are going crazy. They bought this stuff 2 years ago. They went through property management, like calling them month after month or sending them notice month after month, didn't pay again, we can't evict them, or whatever kind of, issues happen. And they just look at it, they're like, I need out. That definitely exists in that pool of people.